My name is Elias Mercer. I am a fire lookout stationed in the Bitterroot Range of western Montana, assigned to Tower 9A, an aging wooden structure perched above a valley of endless pine. The Forest Service called it a seasonal post, which is their polite way of saying isolation with a paycheck. My job is to watch for smoke, log coordinates, and radio them in before forest devours itself. Straightforward work if you ignore the rules. The official handbook is thin, mostly practical: check visibility, calibrate compass, keep the log updated every 2 hours. But there's another set of rules, unofficial, handwritten in the margins of the tower's logbook by those who came before me. Someone titled the list Guidelines for Surviving Tower 9A. The handwriting changes halfway down the page, like 2 people added to it over time. Some of the ink looks older than the tower wood itself. The first few seemed like jokes. 1. Never answer the radio after midnight. 2. If you hear footsteps on the stairs, lock the hatch and wait until dawn. 3. Do not look directly at Tower 9B across the ridge after dark. 4. Always log sightings of the yellow light, even if it disappears before you blink. I laughed when I first read them. Everyone working remote posts leaves weird notes behind. Cabin fever breeds humor. By my second night, I stopped laughing. The first thing you learn up here is that the forest never really sleeps. Trees pop and shift as if they're breathing. The wind has weight, brushing against the tower with long, invisible hands. Around 100 a.m. on my second night, I was halfway through a crossword when the radio crackled. Static at first, then my own voice came through. Elias, do you copy? It wasn't playback from the recorder. I didn't have one running. It was live, faint, and slightly delayed, like someone repeating me from another tower. Tower 9A to dispatch, I said, leaning in. Was that a relay echo? The radio hissed, then went quiet. I wrote it in the log like protocol demanded. I even made a note in the margins beside Rule 81. I wasn't superstitious yet. 3 days later, a supply run came in by mule trail. The ranger who brought my mail was an older guy named Denton. Gray beard, faded FWS cap. He dropped off water, canned goods, and a pack of handwritten reports from the office. "You're settling in all right?" he asked. "Sure," I said. "Just me, the trees, and a few rules scribbled by your comedians." He frowned. "What rules?" "The ones in the logbook. Something about midnight radio, footsteps, lights." He cut me off. "Don't test those." I thought he was joking, but his tone was dead level. When he left, I watched his mule descend the switchback until the forest swallowed them whole. I didn't see another person for 13 days. On day 5, smoke curled from somewhere east of the ridge. I logged the sighting, called it in, and waited for confirmation. But dispatch said there were no controlled burns and no lightning reports. By the time I adjusted the scope, the smoke was gone. That night, the yellow light appeared. It shimmered across the valley floor, bright, deliberate, like someone swinging a lantern between the trees. I thought it was a hiker until it blinked in a pattern too. Rhythmic to be random, too short. One long, too short again. Morse, maybe. But the code made no sense. When I tried the binoculars, the light vanished. I checked the log from the previous year. Someone had drawn the same sequence of dots and dashes beside the words. Still calling. The next morning, I noticed something else. Footprints in the dirt circling the tower base. Barefoot. Human-shaped, but wrong in proportion. The toes long, curled inward, like grasping roots. I decided not to mention that in the radio report. By day 8, I'd fallen into routine. Wake up at sunrise, scan the valley, log weather, make oatmeal, write something mundane in the notebook, just to hear myself think. I kept the rules pinned above my cot, half as decoration, half as superstition. That night, the footsteps came. It started as a scrape against the lowest stair, one board flexing under weight, then another, higher up. I killed the lantern, heart pounding, straining to hear past the wind. Whatever climbed stopped just beneath the trapdoor hatch. Silence stretched on so long I started to think, was the wood expanding? Then, a soft knock. Not from knuckles, from something harder, duller. Maybe a stone. I remembered rule Hake, lock the hatch and wait until dawn. So I did. I stayed crouched by the cot, rifle across my knees, until the first gray light filled the windows. When I finally opened the hatch, nothing waited below, but one of the steps had a new gouge, 3 deep marks evenly spaced. Claw or chisel, couldn't tell. Around noon, dispatch radioed asking why I hadn't checked in alley the night before. I lied about sleep. No point telling them I'd spent 8 hours frozen in silence while something counted the stairs under me. 2 days later, I spotted movement on the far ridge. Tower 9B. Its signal mirror flashed twice, the sun catching its glass. Someone was over there, waving back at me. I almost waved too before remembering Rule 23. Instead, I looked through the scope. There was someone in the cab. Yes. But they were facing the wrong way, head tilted at an angle no neck should allow, watching something behind them I couldn't see. The figure stayed like that for 10 minutes, before turning and stepping out onto the catwalk. When they leaned over the rail, the motion repeated. 2 short, 1 long, 2 short, matching the yellow light's rhythm from nights earlier. I shut the scope and turned away. That evening, the horizon glowed orange. I thought it was fire, finally. A reason to descend, report move. But as the color brightened, I realized it wasn't flame. The light moved uphill, against the wind, climbing toward me like sunrise in reverse. At 10:04 p.m., my radio crackled again. Tower 9A, a voice said. Calm, my voice. Do you copy? I didn't answer. Elias Mercer, it continued. Softer now, rule number 1. Then static swallowed it. I tore the radio plug from the wall and threw it under the desk. The silence that followed was almost worse. It pressed in like fog, full of unsaid things. When I opened my log to write, new words were already there in faint pencil. Check the hatch before you sleep. I stared at the handwriting. It wasn't mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the lantern burning low and the rifle by my side, trying not to blink too long. Around 3 a.m., something brushed the outside wall. A soft rasp, like bark dragging along metal. Then a whisper from beneath the floorboards. Morning check. In. Elias. The voice was patient. Familiar waiting. I should have called dispatch right then. I should have packed and hiked down at first light. But I told myself fatigue plays tricks. Isolation breeds sound. The mind repeats what it hears. So I stayed. The next day, I found the tower's foundation stones, slightly shifted, like something had pressed against them from below. The compass needle on my desk spun in slow, lazy circles ignoring magnetic north. The yellow light didn't appear that night. Neither did footsteps. For a while I thought maybe it was done. But the silence that followed wasn't relief. It was a pause. 2 nights later, while writing my hourly log, I heard faint tapping on the window behind me. Not the door, not the hatch. The glass, 12 feet above the platform. Tap. When I turned, there were handprints smeared across the pane, all facing inward. I don't know how long I sat there staring at them. Counting the prints, 7 in total. The middle one longer, stretched like the hand had slid downward before vanishing. I flipped through the old logs for comparison. There they were, drawn in the margins of an entry dated 1998. Same 7 prints. Same pattern. Beside them, one note. If they reach the glass, it's already too late. I closed the book and watched dawn creep over the valley. My name is Elias Mercer. I work as a fire lookout in Montana. There are rules you're not supposed to break. I think I've already broken most of them. When the Forest Service radioed that morning, I didn't answer right away. I kept staring at those 7 prints on the glass. Faint in daylight, but visible enough to know they weren't dirt or dust. The oil pattern looked almost human, but too long in the fingers, too flat across the palm. Tower 9A, come in. Dispatch said again. Your overnight check-ins were incomplete. Everything all right up there? I thumbed the button but hesitated. The voice on the other end sounded normal, but I couldn't shake the echo from last night. The one that used my tone, my cadence. Tower 9A to dispatch, I said carefully. All good. Must have been a storm on the line last night. A pause. Then, copy that. Stay sharp, Mercer. We've got a dry system moving east. Potential lightning risk. When the channel clicked off, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for hours. I almost convinced myself the prints were some optical trick from condensation. Almost. That day crawled by slow and heavy. The wind had dropped, leaving the forest unnaturally still. No bird calls, no squirrel chatter. Just that dense silence you get before a storm. Or something worse. I spent most of the afternoon checking equipment, half to feel productive, half to avoid the windows. The binoculars, compass, rain gauge, all normal except for the compass needle still doing its lazy spinning. I even took it apart, thinking a magnet might have come loose. Nothing. By sunset, my nerves were shot. I made coffee stronger than usual and sat by the logbook. Someone before me had written, "Noise means it's watching. Silence means it's waiting." I didn't know whether that was warning or poetry. Either way, I believed it. Around 8 p.m., I noticed something strange below the tower. The undergrowth near the base was flattened in a wide circle, about 10 feet across, like something had lain there all night. The soil wasn't disturbed like an animal bed. It looked pressed, as if weight had come from above. I decided not to go down. When darkness fell, the air grew colder than it should have. Montana nights bite, but this was deeper. Bone cold. The kind that seeps through wood and into skin. I layered up, lit the lantern, and checked the clock. 10:58 p.m. That's when the radio came alive. Static first, then faint breathing. I froze. 9 in, the voice said. Soft, calm, and again, mine. You're late. I didn't move. The voice continued. You saw the prints. It means we're close. For a second, maybe I'd left the radio, connected to some looped feedback. But the thing wasn't even plugged in. I'd thrown the cable aside days ago. Still, the sound came clear through the speaker. You're making this harder, it whispered. Just follow the rules. Then silence. I sat motionless for what felt like hours. When I finally stood, I realized my handprint was now on the window. Fresh, perfect, the same size as the others. I hadn't touched it. That broke me a little. Around 3 a.m., something moved in the tree line below. Not light, not sound, movement. The kind that changes the shadows. I turned off the lantern and crouched near the slit window, trying to let my eyes adjust. That's when I saw Tower 9B again across the ridge. Its light was on, bright and steady. But through the scope, I saw the same figure from before standing on the catwalk, unmoving, arms at its sides. I thought maybe it was a mannequin until it raised one hand and waved. Slow, deliberate. Then another shape appeared behind it. Taller, thinner. The first figure stepped forward, almost like being pushed. Its foot caught the rail and it toppled over. I expected it to fall, but it didn't. It hung there midair, swaying gently like a marionette. The second figure leaned closer to the edge, watching me. I closed the blinds and backed away. No radio, no lights. I just sat in the dark, listening to the wind rise again. When dawn finally came, I climbed down the ladder for the first time in days. My legs trembled so badly I nearly missed a rung. The flattened patch beneath the tower was still there, larger now, with fresh impressions leading into the trees. Long, parallel drags, as if something had been pulled. There was another note nailed to the bottom step, weathered paper, edges curled. Rule Quaint 5. If you see something fall, don't look for where it lands. I went back up. All day I tried to raise anyone on the radio, dispatch nearby towers, even Denton. Nothing but static. My log entries became more like confessions than reports. I wrote about the voice, the prints, the hanging figure. I knew it sounded insane, but writing was the only thing keeping me tethered. At sunset, the yellow light returned. This time closer, halfway up the slope, pulsing faster. I counted the pattern again, 2 short, 1 long, 2 short. Then 3 more flashes, new. Urgent, like a correction. I grabbed the scope. Through it, I saw what I thought was a lantern swinging. But the glow wasn't from flame. It came from within something translucent, something wet. The light shone through like a candle in flesh. And behind it, movement. Something tall. Its outline barely visible except when the glow passed across it. The air seemed to bend around the shape, distorting the trees. I snapped the scope shut and dropped it. The light vanished instantly. By full dark, the radio started again. This time multiple voices overlapping. Dispatch, Denton, my own. An entire conversation that never happened. Snippets of chatter twisted out of order. Copy that. Fire spotted near. Your voice is wrong, check the hatch. It ended with a single whisper. Rule number 6. I didn't know what that was. I flipped the logbook open, scanning for another entry. Sure enough, at the bottom of the list, someone had added one in faint pencil 6. If the tower starts shaking, don't try to leave. That night, the tower began to tremble. At first it felt like wind, strong, steady gusts rattling the frame. But there was no wind. The trees below didn't move. The vibration came from below, through the wood, like something breathing under the foundation. I held onto the desk, teeth clenched, until it stopped. Then, faintly, from under the floorboards, came a sound like fingernails dragging across stone. The hatch handle began to turn. Slowly, clockwise, metal squealing. I ran to it. Slammed the lock shut, shoved the chair beneath for good measure. The air inside the tower felt charged, like static before lightning. My hair rose along my arms. From below a voice, calm, patient. You're breaking the rules. Elias. Something hit the hatch hard enough to rattle dust from the ceiling. Once, twice. Then it stopped. I didn't move until the first light of dawn. When I finally dared open it, the handle was bent out of shape, twisted almost in a knot. The logbook lay open on the desk where I'd left it. Only now, Every page was filled edge to edge in fresh handwriting. The same phrase repeated thousands of times: stay in the tower. By late morning, I decided to leave anyway. I packed essentials: radio, map, revolver, journal. The mule trail, 6 miles down a steep switchback, and if I moved fast I could reach the ranger station before nightfall. I made it maybe half a mile before it first started to hum. It was low at first, like a power line. Then louder, vibrating through my ribs. The trees ahead swayed, though there was no wind, their branches bending toward me in synchrony. I turned back and saw Tower 9A still visible through the gaps. Only now the lantern inside was lit, swaying side to side. I hadn't left it on. The hum grew louder, turning into something like whispering. The words weren't English. They weren't anything. Just breath shaped into meaning I couldn't hold. I ran. Branches whipped my face, my pack snagged on roots. But I kept going until my lungs burned. When I finally stopped, the sound had followed me, like the forest itself was moving. Then, ahead, through the thinning trees, I saw another tower. Smaller, newer looking. The placard read 9A. I froze. I turned back the way I'd come. Another tower stood there too, identical, distant through the pines. The same shape, same tilt, same lantern swinging. I checked the compass. It spun uselessly. The ground trembled beneath me and the humming stopped. For the first time in days, complete silence. Then the radio clipped on inside my pack. "Lies," the voice said. My voice. "Rule 6, the forest exhaled, all at once, and the world tilted." I woke up back in the tower, sprawled on the floor. My pack was gone. The radio sat on the desk, unplugged, yet glowing faintly. Outside, dawn again, but paler wrong somehow, as if the light had aged. The first entry in the logbook was open in front of me. Only the name wasn't mine anymore. My name is Denton Crow. I work as a fire lookout in Montana. There are strange rules. When I woke again, the air was colder than it should have been for daylight. My breath fogged white inside the tower, and my ears rang like I'd climbed too high. The logbook still lay open, that new name staring back at me. Denton Crow. The name shouldn't have been there. Denton was real. I'd spoken to him. He was the mule ranger who brought my supplies. His last delivery was a week ago. Maybe more. I'd lost count of the days. I tore the page out and shoved it into my jacket pocket. But the next page carried on like nothing happened. Same handwriting as mine. Same spacing. Only the entries weren't ones I'd written. June 18 radio check incomplete. Light seen from Tower 9B. No response. June 19 footsteps on the stairs. Locked hatch. Rule 2 confirmed. June 20 Elias not answering dispatch. It was describing me. The last line, scrawled in thicker ink, read, "Do not let him leave the tower." I stepped back from the desk like it might bite. The forest outside shimmered in heat that wasn't there, the line of trees warping in and out of focus. I tried the radio again, this time careful to speak low. "Tower 9A to dispatch," I said. "Confirm date and time." Static answered. Then, "Tower 9A, confirm identity." "This is Elias Mercer," I said. "Fire lookout. Post 9A." Another pause, longer this time. Elias Mercer was reported missing 13 years ago. The line snapped to static again. I stared at the receiver, heart pounding so hard it blurred my hearing. I wanted to laugh, some kind of sick joke. But outside, the world looked too still for humor. The trees weren't moving at all, not even the smallest branch. I checked my watch. The second hand had stopped. The air pressure shifted, so sudden my ears popped. Then, From the window, I saw movement below the tower. A man walking the base. Blue Ranger jacket. Hat brim low. Denton. He tilted his head up toward me, and I felt relief like a rush of oxygen.
Hey!
I shouted down.
It's me!
What the hell is going on? He didn't answer. His walk was slow, deliberate, like he was measuring each step. I grabbed the binoculars, but the closer I focused, the worse it got. Denton's mouth was open, not moving, not breathing, just open. And his eyes were gone. The sockets reflected light like polished stone. When he stopped beneath the tower, I heard something, not with my ears, but inside my chest. A low hum that pulsed with my heartbeat. Then he spoke, though his jaw didn't move. "You broke the rules, Elias." The voice wasn't his. It was mine again, coming from below. "Stay in the tower," it said. "You belong here now." I backed away, tripped over cot, and hit the floor hard. When I looked again, Denton was gone. The ground below was empty except for the circle of flattened earth. Wider now, as if the tower were slowly sinking into it. The logbook page I'd torn out began to move on its own, rustling like wind touched it, though the air inside was still. Then the ink started to run, bleeding downward into new words. "We need another watcher." That broke something inside me. I didn't care about the rules anymore. I was getting out. I packed whatever I hadn't already lost and waited until daylight burned the horizon white. The forest seemed normal again, almost peaceful. No hum, no movement. As I descended the ladder, each step creaked under my boots, too slow, too loud. I half expected the wood to give way, but it held. When my feet touched ground, I froze. The circle beneath the tower wasn't just pressed earth anymore. It was soft, spongy, like walking on something that shouldn't be under soil. I didn't look down. I just started running. The first mile was easy. Adrenaline carried me. The trail looked right, familiar switchbacks and cairns marking the way. But after the third bend, I realized something was off. The path began looping. I kept seeing the same fallen log, the same snap pine with the lightning scar. By the fourth time, my footprints overlapped perfectly. The forest wasn't changing. I was. I stopped and took out my map, unfolded it with shaking hands. The ink lines didn't match anymore. The contours had shifted, drawn like melting wax. Tower 9A was gone. In its place, a black smudge label obsolete. I turned in a slow circle, trying to orient by sun, but the light had no direction. The shadows bent in two directions at once. That's when I heard the whistle. It came from somewhere deeper in the valley. One long note, almost human. Then, faintly, the echo answered, closer this time. I thought maybe it was help until I recognized the tone. It wasn't a signal. It was the same pitch my radio made when the power cut. The whistle came again, this time from behind me. I spun around. Between the trees stood a figure. Same ranger jacket, same stance. But it wasn't Denton. It was me. He, or I, was holding the radio microphone, whispering something into it. The sound reached me seconds before his lips moved. Elias Mercer. Rule 7. There hadn't been a seventh rule. I'd only ever seen 6. I turned and ran. Branches clawed at my jacket, thorns ripped my skin. Every time I blinked, the forest rearranged. New ridges, same horizon. The trees themselves seemed to close ranks, funneling me towards something unseen. Eventually, I stumbled into a clearing I didn't recognize. At the center stood a tower, shorter, newer looking than mine, but marked with the same 9A placard. Only this one was built from pale, fresh wood. Through the window at the top, someone moved. A man sitting at the desk writing in a logbook. It was me again. The version of me looked older. Dirt-streaked, tired. Same jacket but torn. He looked up suddenly, eyes meeting mine across the distance. Then he smiled. I didn't go closer. I just stood there until the forest behind me started whispering again. The sound wasn't words at first, more like static. But slowly, it formed one phrase: "Stay in the tower." The whisper rose until it filled the clearing, coming from every tree, every blade of grass. Then, all at once, silence. When I looked back at the tower, the window was empty. Something shifted behind me. The ground trembled once, just enough to knock pine needles loose. And then, from the trees, stepped Denton again. His mouth was closed this time. Eyes still black, but his skin had turned gray and dry like bark. He raised his hand and pointed toward the tower. "Go back," he said, and the sound came from inside my head. I took one step back, then another. The forest seemed to lean closer with me. When I turned to run, the tower's door was already open. Inside, it smelled like wet earth and smoke. The same logbook sat on the desk, pages fluttering as if in wind that didn't exist. I flipped through them, desperate to find something, anything to explain this. At the very end, in fresh handwriting, were 4 new rules. 7. When you meet yourself, don't speak first. When the forest goes quiet, it's listening. 9. If the tower calls your name, answer once. 10. There is no leaving on foot. My hands shook as I read the last one. Outside, the forest had gone utterly silent again. Then, faintly, from the base of the stairs, footsteps, not climbing this time, descending. I went to the window and looked down, but there was no one there. The sound came from inside the tower, moving deeper into the ground. The trapdoor creaked open on its own, a slow inhale of wood and dark. I grabbed the rifle, aimed at nothing. From below, a voice rose up. My voice. "Elias Mercer. You're late for your shift." I dropped the gun. The air pulsed around me, thick as water. The windows flickered between night and day like blinking eyes. Then the tower began to shake again. I staggered to the desk, grabbed the logbook, and pressed my hand to the page. The ink blood under my skin warm alive. The words rearranged themselves around my palms. Rule 11. The tower keeps what it builds. I don't remember falling, but I woke in darkness, the air damp and close. The smell of dirt was everywhere. Above me, through slats of wood, a faint yellow glow flickered. The hatch was shut. From the other side, something was moving, slowly pacing the floorboards. I reached up, my fingers brushing the underside of the wood, and realized I wasn't under the tower anymore. I was the space beneath it, the one pressed into the ground, where the earth stayed soft. The thing above me, myself, maybe, dragged the chair across the floor, same way I used to. Same creak, same rhythm. I heard the radio click on. "Tower 9A to dispatch," it said. "Visibility clear, no smoke." My voice, steady and calm. Then, the sound of a pencil scratching in the logbook. I tried to call out, but soil filled my mouth. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank until the glow above turned to shadow. And then I heard the forest again. Hundreds of whispers overlapping, all saying the same thing: stay in the tower. Elias, stay. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting at the desk. The morning light poured, through the glass warm and clean. The prints on the window were gone. The compass needle pointed north again. Everything looked normal. The radio hissed softly. Dispatch's voice came through, distant but familiar. "Tower 9A, come in. What's your name for the log?" I looked down at the open page. The pen rested between my fingers. "My name is Denton Crow," I said. "I work as a fire lookout in Montana. There are strange rules." And I wrote the first one down again, for whoever comes next. The tower feels new again. The wood smells raw, the hinges don't groan when I open the hatch. Even the glass panes have no smudges. It's as if the old structure was replaced overnight. I know better than to think that's true. The forest doesn't rebuild. It reuses. I'm Denton Crow now, at least on paper. I say the name when dispatch calls, and they never question it. They log me in, confirm weather readings. Move on. No mention of Elias Mercer, no questions about missing watchmen or vanished towers. Sometimes, at night, I think I can hear Elias pacing just beneath the floor. The first few days passed quiet. Too quiet. No prints, no yellow lights, no voices. I made myself believe maybe the cycle had broken. Maybe this was the reset the place always threatened. I even started sleeping again. Short bursts, dreamless, heavy. Then the rules started changing. The old page that used to list 6, then 11, now has only 5. The others faded. I remember them word for word, but they're not there anymore. Just white space and faint indents where the pencil pressed. The 5 that remain are different. 1. Never answer the radio after midnight. 2. If you hear footsteps, open the hatch. 3. Do not look away when the forest breathes. 4. When dawn comes twice, you're not alone. 5. Write down your name before you forget it. I traced the handwriting, wondering whose it was. Elias's script was neat, rigid. These letters looked wider, shakier, like someone was writing in gloves. On the third night, dawn came twice. The first light appeared normal. Thin gray line, then orange bleeding through fog. I wrote the usual weather report, made coffee, logged a clean horizon. At 8:14 a.m., the world blinked. Light folded back into darkness like someone had slammed a lid over the sky. The birds went silent mid-song, and then sunrise again. The same as before. My watch said 6:07 a.m. I checked the logbook. The entry I'd just written was gone. The page was blank except for 3 faint words at the top. Don't look outside. I should have listened. I didn't. The valley had changed color. Paler, bleached, almost white. The pines glowed faintly, like frost under sunlight. Then I realized they were moving, not swaying. Breathing. Their trunks expanded and contracted, slow and steady. I dropped the binoculars and stumbled back, heart pounding so hard my ribs ached. The forest exhaled then, a long groan that bent the air. The smell that followed was metallic, like blood and ozone. When I looked again, the horizon had teeth. Rows of them, stretching for miles. Just above the tree line, pale, uneven shapes curving upward like mountains that weren't supposed to be there. They shifted once, the entire ridge rolling in a slow yawn, then stilled. The trees returned to normal. The light outside dimmed again. The clock said 8:15 a.m. For the second time, I sat down and forced my shaking hands to write Rule 3 confirmed. That afternoon, dispatch radioed. Routine check. Tower 9A, what's your visibility? I hesitated, then, clear. A pause. Copy that, Tower 9A. Remember, if you see the yellow light, report immediately. I hadn't told them about that light. Not once. When I asked who was speaking, the voice cut out mid-sentence. That night, I stayed up reading the old entries again, flipping through names. Some faded. Some carved deep enough to scar the paper. Each name had the same closing line, I work as a fire lookout in Montana. There are strange rules. The earliest date I could find was from 1953. Sometime around midnight, something knocked at the hatch. 3 soft taps. Pause. 3 more. I froze. The first rule, never answer after midnight, burned in my head. But then I remembered the new version. If you hear footsteps, open the hatch. I had to choose which version of the tower I belonged to. The handle turned slowly on its own, creaking in protest. Against every sane impulse, I unlocked it. Cold air rushed up from below, wet, mineral, full of something older than air. I peered down. Darkness. Then a face rose through it. Not human anymore. Elias, or what was left of him. His eyes were mirrors, his mouth a perfect circle of light, like he'd swallowed a lantern. He didn't climb up. He rose, hovering just below the edge. The smell of burned pine filled the room. "Your shift's almost over," he said in my voice. I slammed the hatch and threw the bolt, then pressed my ear against the wood. No sound. No breathing. But the floor felt warmer now, pulsing faintly. By dawn, the hatch was cool again. I didn't open it. The day passed in strange calm. I tried not to think about rules or murals or Elias's burned face. I focused on paperwork, routine, the small mechanical tasks that make you feel human. But as dusk crept in, I realized the shadows inside the tower weren't keeping up with the light. Mine lingered longer. When I moved, it didn't follow right away. I turned the lantern off, thinking maybe the light was playing tricks. But the outline on the wall stayed glowing faintly, even in dark. It began to tilt its head, slow, deliberate. Then it smiled. The window glass beside it started to fog from the outside. Letters forming in condensation. Look at Tower 9B. I hadn't seen 9B in days. It used to sit clearly across the ridge, always visible in good weather. Now, as I raised the binoculars, the ridge was empty. Just mist and tree line. Then something flickered. Brief. Like a signal mirror catching light. Through the scope, I saw a tower again. Smaller, crooked. The lantern inside swung side to side. There was someone in the cab. He stood facing me, one hand raised. I couldn't see his features clearly until he leaned closer to the glass. Then I realized what I was looking at. It was me. Same flannel shirt, same face, but older, hollow-eyed. He mouthed something slowly. Words I could almost hear through the air. Stay in the tower. Then, behind him, a second figure moved. Elias again, mouth glowing. He leaned close to my double and whispered something I couldn't read. The older version of me turned, nodded, then lifted the lantern. The glow from it burned white across the ridge. When it hit my tower, the light came through the glass. Not around it, through. It cut straight across the room, carving the wood with a faint hiss. I felt heat against my skin, like a sunbeam made solid. I stumbled backward, shielding my face. When I lowered my arm, the beam had burned words into the floorboards. "He's below you." Before I could react, the hatch shook once. Then again harder. The lock snapped. Something slammed upward through it, and the floor splintered in a burst of dust and cold air. A hand shot out, pale, long-fingered, streaked with ash. I grabbed the rifle and fired. The recoil nearly knocked me down. Silence. Smoke drifted up from the broken wood. When it cleared, nothing was there. The hole was deep, though far deeper than the crawl space should have been. I dropped a match inside and watched it fall. It never hit bottom. The flame just faded away, swallowed by the dark. I nailed the hatch shut with everything I had. Wood, bolts, even part of the chair. Then I sat there until sunrise, listening to faint knocking from beneath. By morning, it stopped. The compass was still spinning. The radio was dead. But on the desk sat a new page I hadn't written. Neat, precise handwriting. Elias's again. It read, "If you survive long enough, you'll forget which name was yours." That's how the tower keeps you. I don't know how much longer I can stay. The days are bleeding together. Light skipping, shadows moving when I don't. The forest hums under every gust. And sometimes I hear laughter carried on the wind. Last night, for the first time, the yellow light came from inside the tower. It hovered above the logbook, steady and warm, casting no shadow. When I tried to touch it, the light split in two and drifted apart like dust motes, circling me once before vanishing through the walls. Afterward, the new rules on the page rearranged themselves again. 1. Never answer the radio after midnight. 2. Never open the hatch. 3. Never look at Tower 9B. 4. Never forget your name. 5. Never write the last rule. I think that's the tower's way of keeping me alive, or keeping me useful. At sunset, I saw movement far down the switchback trail. A figure hiking up, small against the slope, backpack glinting in the light. The next replacement. Maybe. I watched through the scope as they paused to catch their breath, glanced up at me, then waved. I almost called out, almost warned them to turn back. But the radio crackled before I could move. "Tower 9A, this is dispatch," a new voice said. Young. Bright. "We're sending a rookie up for the handover. Should reach you by dusk." "Copy?" I looked down at the slope again. The hiker was already halfway here. I pressed the radio button, the words heavy in my throat. "Copy," I said. "I'll be ready." The signal clicked off. Now the sun's setting again. The forest breathes, slow and deep, and I can hear the soft thump of boots on the ladder. One by one. Steady. I should warn them. I should. But instead, I open the logbook, uncap the pen, and turn to a fresh page. The habit comes naturally, like I've done it hundreds of times. I write the first line the way I remember it. My name is Elias Mercer. I work as a fire lookout in Montana. There are strange rules. The footsteps reach the hatch, a pause, then a polite knock. I close the book. "Come in," I say. The man who climbs through the hatch looks about 30. Lean, dark-haired. Wearing the standard issue forest service jacket with a badge too new to belong. His face is open and eager in the way that only the untested manage. The kind that still believes in job descriptions. "Afternoon," he says, panting slightly. "You must be Ranger Crow." I nod. My voice feels slow in my throat. Been a while since they sent anyone up. He sets his pack down, looking around. Hell of a view. I've read about towers like this in the manual. Isolated posts, pure focus. I've been waiting months for an assignment. "Lucky you," I say. He laughs, misreading me completely. I watch the way his eyes flick over the space. The desk, the logbook, the nailed hatch in the corner. His gaze lingers there a moment longer than I'd like. "Structural issue?" he asks. "Just maintenance." I lie. "Boards rot faster at this altitude." He nods, satisfied, and drops into the chair opposite me. "I'm supposed to shadow you for a week. Learn the routine before taking over. Dispatch said you'd show me the ropes." "Sure," I say. Routine's simple. Watch the forest. Log everything. Follow the rules. He grins. The actual handbook rules, right? Not the ghost stories people whisper at base camp. "Buth," I say. He studies me, unsure if I'm joking. Then he shrugs, unpacking a radio. Notebook, a small camera. Everything new and factory clean. He writes his name neatly at the top of his first page, Ethan Rowe. For a long time, the tower feels almost normal. He talks about his girlfriend back in Missoula, the boredom of training, the smell of pine. I nod at the right places. He doesn't notice how often I glance toward the forest line. At dusk, I light the lantern. The shadows press closer outside, heavier than before. Ethan leans on the railing, squinting down the slope. "That another tower over there?" he asks, pointing to the ridge. My stomach turns cold. "Tower 9B. It's visible again, faint in the haze." "I thought they decommissioned those," he says. "Still got a light." "Don't look at it," I say too sharply. He laughs, but there's an edge of uncertainty now. "Okay, boss." The radio crackles to life before I can explain. Static, then a voice that isn't dispatch. "Tower 9A," it says. "Shift change confirmed." "Welcome, Ranger Row." Ethan frowns. "Huh. How'd they know I got here already?" The voice continues, too clear for static. "Please ensure former occupant remains on site until protocol is complete." I reach across him and pull the plug from the socket. The sound cuts. "Hey," he says, half protesting. "Radio interference," I mutter. "Weather does that." Outside, the sky bruises purple, then black. The forest hums low, almost like it's tuning itself. Ethan doesn't hear it yet. Around midnight, I find him by the window, staring across the ridge again. The light from Tower 9B flickers, same pattern. 2 short, 1 long, 2 short. "Someone's signaling," he says. Should I respond? I grab his wrist before he can lift the mirror. "Don't." His eyes widen. "Why not?" I don't answer. The forest does it for me. A gust rattles the tower, and for an instant the air smells of ash and wet stone. The lantern flame stretches tall, then snuffs out entirely. Ethan curses, fumbling for his flashlight. In that brief second of darkness, I see movement near the hatch. A handprint forms on the wood, fresh, slick, and glowing faintly yellow. "Did you see that?" he whispers. I lie. "No." He doesn't sleep that night. Neither do I. By morning, he's quieter, the enthusiasm drained out of him. He asks few questions, keeps glancing toward the hatch like he expects it to move. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Around noon, the radio, still unplugged, crackles again. This time the voice is faint, like underwater. "Ethan Rowe," it says. "Write your name for the log." He freezes. "Did you hear that?" I don't answer. The logbook on the desk flips a page on its own. Blank. Waiting. He hesitates, then writes it Ethan Rowe. The ink seeps too quickly into the paper, spreading in veins that look more like roots than letters. He jerks back. The hell. "Don't tear it out," I say. "How did you?" He looks at me, really looks, and something inside him shifts. "You've seen this before. More than once." He backs toward the door. "I'm not doing this, man. I'll hike down." "You won't make it far," I say quietly. He laughs, high and nervous. "That's what everyone says in these stories." He grabs his pack and pushes out into the daylight. I don't stop him. For the first hour, I watch through the binoculars. He moves fast, confident, the way we all do when we still think the world is linear. The trail bends, disappears, returns. The sun stays frozen above him, neither climbing nor falling. Then I see it, his path looping back, same bend, same fallen log, same flash of his jacket. He's walking in circles now. When he finally looks up toward me again, his face is pale. He starts running. He won't reach me before dark. I light the lantern. The rules don't protect you, but they keep the pattern neat. That's all this place cares about. By nightfall, I hear him calling from below. His voice breaks between trees. "Crow!" I'm lost. I don't answer. The forest does, mimicking him. Dozens of voices overlapping in perfect pitch. I'm lost. I'm lost. I'm lost. He screams once, and the echo keeps going long after he stops. Around midnight, the radio hums again. Shift completion confirmed. It says, "Welcome, Ranger Crow. Write your name." I look at the logbook. My name is already there. Below, footsteps circle the tower. Slow, patient. A knock follows. 3 soft taps. "Crow," Ethan's voice calls. It's cold out here. He's standing at the base, looking up through the dark. I shouldn't, but I do. I lean over the railing. He's smiling. Too wide. "Let me in," he says, and light blooms in his throat, pale and steady like a lantern flame trapped behind his teeth. The air shudders. The tower creaks. I stumble back from the railing as he begins to climb. Each rung groans under invisible weight. The rules blur in my head. Never open. Never look. Never answer. I do all 3. When the hatch rattles, I drop the bolt. The door swings open on its own. He isn't there. Just a smell, smoke, pine, and something like ozone. The floor vibrates, subtle at first, then stronger. The shadows around the room stretch upward, reaching for me. The logbook turns another page. New ink appears in neat handwriting. I don't recognize Rule 12. When the next one arrives, stay until you are replaced. The tower stops shaking. The air calms. I kneel beside the logbook, hand hovering over the page. The ink is still wet. Outside, the forest exhales again. Long, slow, and heavy enough to bend the glass. The hatch creaks once more, softer this time. I glance down and see light glowing faintly from below, warm and golden. Not threatening, almost inviting. I think of Elias, of how he must have felt near the end. Tired, maybe even relieved to let someone else take his place. That's the trick of the tower. It doesn't need to trap you by force. It waits until you want to stay. The voice from below speaks again. Calm, patient, familiar. It says, "Your shift's complete." The light glows brighter through the cracks, pulsing like a heartbeat. I pick up the pen, right beneath the last entry acknowledged. Then I close the logbook. The lantern flickers, dying down to a soft ember. The yellow light from below seeps up through the floorboards, washing over my hands. I don't resist it. The forest hums once more, and the tower breathes with it. Down the trail, faint in the distance, I hear another set of boots climbing. Slow. Determined, the cycle continues. The next one arrives at dusk. I know before I see them. The tower grows restless first, the wood tightening, the glass humming in its frame. The compass needle spinning lazy circles, as if trying to orient toward a new pulse. The forest breathes in, the way it always does before change. Then, from far below, I hear footsteps. Slow, steady, human for now. I step to the window. Through the mist, a small shape appears on the switchback, moving with purpose. The new ranger. The next name. The one the tower called. I could warn them. I could scream down, tell them to turn back, before the air rearranges itself around their bones. But the truth is, I don't have a voice anymore. Not the kind that travels far. The tower has taken that from me too. Instead, I do what's expected. I light the lantern. Its glow spreads across the valley like an open eye, bright enough to guide, faint enough to lie. The figure looks up, sees the light, and waves. They keep climbing. By the time they reach the base, it's full dark. The footsteps pause, a moment's hesitation before the ladder. Then the soft rhythm begins, boot against metal, step by step. When the hatch rattles, I'm already at the desk. The logbook is open to a blank page. The pen waits. The knock comes 3 times. The same pattern as always. "Come in," I say, though the sound that leaves me isn't quite a voice anymore. The hatch opens. A woman climbs through, mid-30s maybe. Sharp-eyed, wind-chapped, wearing a ranger's coat with a patch that reads A. Jensen. She exhales, half laugh, half relief. "Damn. That trail's a killer. You must be Ranger Crow." I nod. My throat acts with the motion. "I was." She blinks at that but smiles anyway. "They told me I'd find the best training up here. Said you knew this post better than anyone." "I do," I say. "That's the problem." She chuckles, sets her back down, and glances around the room. Her gaze lingers on the nailed hatch. "You've got a cellar." "Not exactly." Her eyes narrow a little at my tone, but she doesn't ask more. She's still in that stage. Believing the rules are metaphors, the job a challenge of endurance, not survival. I envy her for it. She unpacks, slowly filling silence with small talk, where she's from, the way the valley reminds her of home, how she doesn't scare easy. I let her talk. The forest outside listens too. At some point, she notices the old logbook. "Mind if I take a look?" I shake my head. She flips through the entries, smiling at the earlier years. These go back decades, 1950s even. Some of these are almost poetic. She reads aloud, "Never open the hatch after midnight." Ha! Guess that's the Montana version of "Don't feed the bears." She doesn't notice how the words change as she turns the pages. By the time she reaches the last one, my entry, the letters are darker, the ink still damp. She traces it with her finger. "Denton Crow."
That's you, right?
It was. Something in my tone makes her look up. "You okay?" Before I can answer, the radio clicks alive. Static hisses, then a clear voice, calm, even official. "Tower 9A, this is dispatch. Confirming new arrival. Welcome. Ranger Jensen." She grins, right on cue. "Please confirm that Ranger Crow remains on site for debrief." Her smile falters. He's right here." The radio pauses, then replies, "Copy. Proceed with protocol." "What protocol?" she asks, but the line cuts to static. Outside, the wind changes. The forest exhales slow and deep, the trees bending just slightly as if nodding. She looks uneasy now. "You've got that look?" she says. "Like you've seen this before?" "I have." "How many times?" I look toward the nailed hatch. "Enough." She doesn't laugh this time. She sits, staring at the glass. "What happens if I don't follow the rules?" "You'll find out." "Maybe I'd rather know now." "You wouldn't," I say quietly. The lantern flickers once, as if agreeing. That night, she doesn't sleep. She paces, restless, watching the trees. Every few minutes, she glances toward Tower 9B's ridge, though she can't see it through the fog. I don't have the heart to tell her it's already looking back. At midnight, the radio comes alive again. "Ranger Jensen," it says. "Do you copy?" She answers instinctively. "Copy." The light in the room dims. I close my eyes. "You shouldn't have done that," I whisper. The voice on the radio changes, pitch by pitch, syllable by syllable, until it's hers speaking back to her. "Copy," it says again. "We're so glad you made it." Her hand trembles. "What is this?" "Rule 1, I remind her. She shuts the radio off. The silence that follows is worse. The forest has gone still again. The air is too thick, the sound too deep. When the first knock comes from the hatch, it's gentle, then louder, then urgent. "Denton." A voice calls from below. My own. She's not ready. She stares at me, eyes wide. Oh, don't open it, I say. The voice repeats, softer this time. It's almost dawn. She steps closer, drawn by the tone, and for a moment I think she'll disobey. But then she stops, shaking her head. You're insane. You and your rules. I'm hiking down at first light. I don't argue. She won't get far. At 3:07 a.m., the tower shakes once. The glass hums. The forest whispers a word that sounds like now. The lantern flares bright, then dies. When it's over, the hatch is silent again. She doesn't speak for hours. I can feel her thinking. Every breath a question she's afraid to ask. By morning, the valley glows wrong again. The sun is too white. The air too still. She goes to the railing and gasps. Below, the trees are rearranging. The trails have vanished, replaced by winding clearings shaped like symbols, spirals, lines, eyes. And from the distance, far across the ridge, Tower 9B flickers awake, its lantern swinging in the same rhythm as our hearts. She lowers the binoculars. That's not possible. None of this is, I say. The radio crackles again. Tower 9A. The voice says, proceed with transfer. She frowns. Transfer of what? I don't answer. The logbook flips open on its own. Her name appears at the top of a fresh page. A. Jensen. Below it, words begin writing themselves in faint, steady strokes. I work as a fire lookout in Montana. There are strange rules. She stumbles back. What the hell is this? Your shift, I say. She turns to me, fear blooming into fury. No, I'm leaving. I nod. Everyone says that. She grabs her pack, throws the door open, and disappears into the blinding light outside. I stand at the window and watch her walk into the forest. For a while, she's visible, her shape distinct among the pines. Then the trees close, and she's gone. The silence that follows is total. Even the wind holds its breath. I return to the desk. The logbook waits, patient. The ink has dried. The page beneath hers is already filling with faint handwriting. Crow, status complete. I sit, let the pen rest in my palm. The tower creaks once, a sound almost affectionate. The forest exhales slow and long, like relief. Through the window, I see movement. Another tower lighting up in the far distance, its glow spreading across the valley. The cycle has shifted outward again. A new tower for a new name. I realize then what the pattern truly is. Each time, the old watcher becomes the echo. The one below. The voice that guides. The tower doesn't keep us. It copies us. Leaves the original buried in the soil beneath, roots feeding the next version. That's how it breathes. The air around me thickens, heavy as sleep. My hands begin to fade first, outlines blurring. Skin going translucent like smoke. I don't fight it. The last thing I see is the logbook turning another page. It writes for me now. My name is Denton Crow. I was a fire lookout in Montana. There were rules. The ink pauses, then adds one more line. He followed them well. The lantern flickers out. Down below in the circle of pressed earth, something stirs. A faint glow, golden and slow, pulsing in rhythm with the tower's breath. Then from far down the slope, I hear a new voice calling. Tower 9A, this is dispatch. Ranger Jensen, do you copy? The sound fades, the forest exhales again. The tower sighs. Somewhere far above. The lantern flares to life for the next watcher.